Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thanks for stopping by. People often write me, I shouldn't say often, but they do write me from time to time. Some of them who have never been here or anywhere in Latin America. And they have images from the 20th century, and some of them from the 21st century from other countries. And they worry about the hot-headed Latinos, people rioting in the streets, people causing trouble, uh, violence and everything else in public, just explosively out of nowhere, and so on and so forth. And they worry about that, And I always tell them, don't worry about that. That's not what we do in Panama. And we had an excellent example of how these things go and how different Panama can be than other nations. Just last Tuesday, when we completed a series of games played to qualify the teams that were going to go to the World Cup. Now, whether you call it association football or soccer football or whatever, I'll just use whatever term comes to mind. I'll probably say soccer because I'm an American. But that the World Cup is it. Every 4 years, it's huge, and dozens of nations all over the world want to qualify for it. And it's just to get in is a great honor. To win, of course, is spectacular, but getting in is the first big challenge. And in all its history, Panama's team has never been able to qualify. They've never gone to the World Cup. And it's been very, very, very disappointing for soccer fans here. Now, we're a baseball country in many respects. We take baseball very seriously. But there are a lot of people who think soccer, football is a great sport, and they are involved in it all the time. And it seems as if maybe once we could qualify, but we fail time after time. After a while, people begin to expect the worst, and when just because it's always been that way. So it was that on the 10th of October, 5 days ago, the final three games of the six teams in our particular region who were contesting each other to qualify. Three would qualify. The fourth would be like what Americans call a wild card. They have an opportunity to play another team in a similar position, and the winner goes on. Uh, but it's the top three that you really want to be in because then you're on your way. And it was been very, very hotly contested this year. But in those last three games, it was pretty generally agreed uh, which teams were going to win those three games. Well, after the dust cleared, all three of them had lost. One of those was Costa Rica, and it had played us. Panama won that game. And in the process, Panama, for the first time in its history, qualified to go to the World Cup. I was glued to the television set. It was very emotional. It's, everything hangs on this particular game. Any hope you have of getting into the World Cup is going to be decided right there in front of your eyes. It got so bad that I actually stepped out on my balcony and looked at the game through the window, away from the sound, because I was getting really, really involved. But thankfully, I went back in uh, and continued to watch the game from inside. And in the 88th minute, a brilliant and magnificent goal was kicked by a Panamanian player, Mr. Torres, and it was a 2-1 game, and we were ahead, and we held on to it, and we won. And we all went bananas. Of course, I was jumping up and down. I was all by myself. I didn't join anybody for that. I just decided to watch it at home, and I was just really so happy for everybody. Well, the whole city was happy, and tens of thousands of people poured out into the streets, and probably several hundred thousand actually, in the streets and in bars and clubs everywhere all over town. It was just one massive celebration. Now, folks, I come from the United States and play American football there, and you can have two university teams play a game, and maybe they're rivals and all this. And when it's over, instead of just having a party, they go in a riot. They turn vehicles over, they set fires, they beat people up, for God's sakes. The police are making arrests. It's a riot. And you see it on television, you think, my God, what's wrong with these people? I mean, these are the winners, right? The winners are out there acting like complete idiots, damaging themselves and other people's property. I mean, why? It just disgusts me. It always makes me very angry because it's just not appropriate. It's just a game, guys. Grow up. And needless to say, as I know many of you come from countries, including now the United States, that are really soccer crazy, that in Europe and other parts of Latin America and other countries, a simple soccer game can turn into a horrific riot. In Europe and English, they refer to it as hooliganism. Hooligan being an old English word we don't use much in the U.S., but it refers to a troublemaker, somebody who's out there really causing trouble. They do the most incredible thing. They riot. 100,000 people rioting in the middle of the city. And the damage, the gun is incredible. And the next morning, you just see what's left over from it all. And how possesses these people to act like that is a mystery to me. But it's as if civilization means nothing when you win. Oh, gosh. So here I am. This is, I would arguably, the greatest moment in Panamanian sports history to actually qualify for the World Cup. It is a miracle. It is magnificent. It's impossible to be any happier. Everybody was watching that and listening to that game. And the streets are just packed with people. I live in an area near a major artery. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, it was very loud. I mean, horns honking constantly all the time, cars flashing their lights, and people walking up and down the street. Just thousands of people. It was just an amazing sight. And it was something, I put a photograph up on my Facebook site, and it was quite of the blaze of lights coming down the street at me at that hour in the morning. It was quite an experience. People were so very happy. And they too had a problem, it turned out, because the next morning I got on Facebook and I went to some of my Panamanian Facebook friends, and they had photographs, and they were disgusted at the behavior of the fans. And what was the problem? Litter. Litter. Mm-hmm. They had some pretty dramatic photographs in streets where there were particularly large groups of people had gathered. I mean, after all, you couldn't even move. It was so packed. It was like a parking lot out there, and so everybody was on foot. But in that street, there were paper cups and sandwich wrappers and potato chip bags and everything else scattered all over the place. It was thick. And the commenters were just saying, what's wrong with us? How can we do this? And why wasn't this cleaned up immediately? And everything else. Interesting. And I'm sitting there saying, they littered. Oh, they win the biggest game in their history of sports in Panama, and they littered. Compare that to North America, Europe, and other countries, and what often goes on in soccer games and other sporting events there. The violence that goes on. You know I get really sick and tired of people who come from countries who think they're so sophisticated and so well educated and so civilized, and think of themselves as being a step above Panamanians. And that includes people from other Latin American countries that are larger and are more famous, I guess you'd say. And yet act like fools when they won a game, a sports game, who turn themselves into rioters. What do they think? And then they come down and tell us, as hot-headed Latinos and so on. And when people write me and ask me about this, I say, no, you can find hot-headed Latinos, you can find hot-headed Anglos, you can find hot-headed anybody in a lot of different places in this planet. But if you're looking for them here in Panama, you're going to be disappointed because we just don't do that sort of thing. And now we have perhaps the best piece of evidence ever that we are not like the others. Well, not everybody else. There are other nations that are pretty civilized in their celebrations too, but so many who are not, and so many of them coming from countries that are so often critical of Panama. I really think that the Panamanian people did exactly what they should have done. They were so incredibly happy. They did not shy back from expressing it. You could hear it. Believe me, you could hear it all night long. so happy, so excited, and they never thought they needed to hurt anyone or destroy anything. And we, I'm sorry, but it makes me very unhappy when I hear the nation that I call home, and this is it, criticized by people who are running off stories they've heard. Maybe, Panama has a past history, and we all do. All our nations have had periods in our history when things have just not gone very well. My nation had a civil war, for God's sakes. Panama's never had a civil war. You have a lot of stuff goes on in nations, but Panama has just been so stable. I could tell you so many stories. I keep you here for 30 minutes talking about stories of different things that happened. I'll just mention one of them, though, because it's soccer as well. And it was, good grief, 10, 11 years, 12 years ago, way, way back. Probably 12 years ago. Anyhow, um, we have a special competition called the Gold Cup, Copa de Oro, and it turned out that the United States and Panama were the finalists, and Panama was not used to being in the finals for that particular competition. And I was going to go down, as I had before, to a bar, restaurant, coffee house, whatever you want to call it, where I would watch on the big screen out with a whole bunch of people and tables. And I thought, oh, it's Panama against the U.S. Uh-oh. So I went out and I found myself a proper T-shirt for our team, which is called La Marea Roja, the Red Tide. So, of course, it's a bright red shirt and everything else. So I can look like a proper Panamanian supporter. And of course, I walk in and sit down there as I was learning in the early days. Everybody knew I was a gringo the moment they saw me, but no one minded. And we were so packed in, every seat was taken in the standing room only, people everywhere. And my table should have held maybe 3 people, it had 6 crammed around it. And the game began, and I cheered lustily when Panama scored a goal, and I, of course, applauded and cheered when my team did, but maybe not quite as enthusiastically, because I was doing it for the benefit of the people sitting around me. And finally, this older middle-aged lady reached across the table and put her hand on mine, and she said, "It's all right to cheer for your team." I said, thank you very much. And when the game was over, the United States had won. And people got up to leave, and of course it's a big crowd. It's a very slow process. Panamanian after Panamanian came to me and shook my hand. They knew I was an American, and they said, "Your team played really well. You should be proud of them. They did it. They did a great job." And I said, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." As people did this, I was really surprised. But the next morning in the newspapers, the headlines, it was one of the most charming moment I've spent in this country, and one of the most charming things I've seen in my life. I think charming is the word for it. When I picked up the newspapers and saw them say, Panama, U.S. co-champions. And the attitude was, yes, we lost the game, but we made it into the finals. So we won too. So the U.S. has the championship, but we're champions. Our team is champions just for getting up there and being able to compete for it. And I thought that is an incredibly healthy attitude to take to the whole thing. And it was not a bad word said about the U.S. or anything else. I mean, that's not what we do. We don't do that to other people. But it was focused only on being supportive of their own folks. And I just thought that was a good example of the attitude. That whole evening was a special evening for me. I learned a lot about Panama while I was there, just in that one evening. So if you are worried about that, don't. It's not worth worrying about. It's not going to happen. Once in a while, over 13 years, we've had 2 or 3 incidents where small groups have gotten out of hand, and the next morning, the press and everybody from the taxi cab drivers up to the executives and business executives will condemn the people who cause trouble. It's not acceptable behavior, right? And especially with sports, it's just a game. There's no need for any of this. So maybe these other nations, they think they're more sophisticated and more educated, but we're more mature. And that's what really strikes me the most. I'm talking, of course, of those other nations that have these problems. We don't. Why? Well, you can come up with a lot of different reasons why things have developed over decades here in Panama the way they have, but who cares? The point is that we're not that way. We just had the greatest moment in our sports history, and we had every excuse, if we wanted one, for losing our cool and just tearing things up and being violent. And it didn't happen. We littered. I'll tell you the truth. If it were a critical issue for me, for sure, I would much rather live in a nation where they littered than live in a nation where they rioted. So, as a result, I want to encourage you to understand that you don't make a generalization about Panama when you haven't even come. You don't think back on memories of things you've seen in other Latin American cities or even in Panama in decades past and use that as representing who the Panamanian people are now. And that's why I said, or I'm going to be titling this particular video as What a Game Can Tell You About a Country. And I think the reaction to this game says a lot about the Panamanian people. And it's something you should know about. I wanted to share it with you. And so I think I would just I must finish by saying congratulations to our fantastic, wonderful football team. We love you. And we're all going to be with you in spirit, if not in person, during the World Cup. But you're going to the World Cup. And we are so proud of you. And you are our champions, regardless of what happens in Russia next year. All right. And I'll take a moment to say thank you to the Costa Ricans. Some 6,000 of them rented buses to come down to see the game. I'm sure some of them with money flew down. And we have quite a few living here, working here, because our economy's in better shape and they can find jobs here. So they were very well represented at the stadium, and they were very enthusiastic in support of their teams. And I'm sure they were disappointed that they had lost, but there was never any problem. I mean, nobody was going to get physical about it. That's absurd. And I want to point out to all of you that Costa Rica has a fine team, and they're going to go to the World Cup, even losing to us. So we're both going to the World Cup. So in a sense, we both won that night, and that's a good way to look at it. But I especially want to say to the Panamanian people, those handful of whom may actually see this video, how proud I am to be here with you, and thankful I am that you let me live with you, and I can be here to support the team, but also to do what I can to help in the country. You're great people, and you're making huge progress in a very short period of time. And you know there are problems. We all know. And you know we're working on them. You all know that well. And we'll continue to. And we'll continue to complain when we think things are wrong. But when it comes to sports, we're mature. You are mature. You deal with it the way a sports game should always be dealt with. And it just makes me very happy to be with you. So, muchísimas gracias a todos. And thank you all very much for dropping by, and I look forward to seeing you again the next time.